Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paideia. Today, we are joined by Sheena Jonker again, and then our very special guest is Amanda Lamond. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So amazing to finally have you. I've heard a lot about you. Sheena, will you do a little introduction for us and tell us why we are here today?
Yes, so I think Amanda and myself met, it must have been about 7-8 years ago, I think, or was it at the beginning of 2014, Amanda? I think you and I had spoken in about 2013. We'd spoken on the phone, and then when I was in Cape Town, you reached out to me and said that we should have a coffee with Jacob Wright, who is there at the moment. So as I understand Amanda's work, she's had a heart to humanize the legal profession and make it a more humane profession within which healthy, whole, in tune with themselves lawyers are helping people in their life crises, usually legal disputes. And so there are many aspects to Amanda's work. She runs the Integrative Law Center. She's run a program for female lawyers to lead in law. And she's also recently started a mentorship program. And as you know, Dan, we've had 2 of her UCT students as mentees on our mediation program last week. And they were absolutely mind-blowingly brilliant.
They were.
In fact, Amanda, the role plays were so good that we had thought we need to have an acting awards at the end of the year. And there are some nominations coming up. But beyond that, the insight and the leadership of these 2 young women was just absolutely astounding. And the depth of how deep they go was absolutely amazing for us. So it was a beautiful experience having them. So Amanda and I have been chatting a little bit by exchanging voice notes, and I'm just getting a sense of what it is that she really does in helping lawyers to heal themselves so that they can go out and heal others, heal legal disputes. And as we always say, Dan, in ancient times, lawyers were regarded as healers of society, just as the physician was regarded as the healer of the body. But we've lost resonance with that, haven't we? And so the lawyers that seek out our mediation training courses are those that I think have this kind of eternal, mystical sense that, no, I should be a healer. I should be a healer. And as the abolitionist movements are saying at the moment, like the Black Lives Matter movements and everything, and in their most radical, essential form, they're saying, what if lawyers saw themselves as healers? What if teachers saw themselves as healers? What if police saw themselves as healers? What if politicians saw themselves as healers? And so this morning I was just mulling over stuff and some exchanges with Amanda, and I said, wait a minute, there's something happening here. A lot of our mediators say to us, or lawyers that come onto our mediation training programs, and doctors and psychologists and all kinds of professionals say, I feel like I came home. That's something we hear a lot, isn't it? I feel like I came home. And as a mom, I want my kids to become who they are, like who they've always been, who they are eternally, just kind of perennially. I want them to become who they are. So there's a sense that when people come on our programs and they feel like they've come home, they've touched a sense of that radical core of the root, the peeled back layers of who they actually are and who they actually always have been and always will be. And so I was telling Amanda on a voice note this morning, just inspired by her work, which she's going to tell us about, that I do a certain amount of mediator whispering after our programs, because just informally, just, kind of intuitively, to say that I was telling her that a lot of our trainees describe something of an identity crisis, of, you know, wanting to transition, wanting to go all in to the healing, the restoration, the therapeutic side of what we do, or the therapeutic work, to immerse themselves completely, but being unable to leave that adversarial, combative world that they know behind them. And I said to her, but isn't your work an indication here? Isn't your work an indication for lawyers and other people trying to make that transition into that homecoming? And so this is where I'd like to ask Amanda to tell us about her work and how we can help those that feel like they've come home but don't know how to leave that adversarialism, that kind of diseased life behind them. Because and I say that because lawyers and other professionals live primarily up in their heads, don't they? That's how they cope. Mm-hmm. So they can disengage their hearts. And we know that addiction and depression and suicidality are high within our depression, within our professional. Slipped up there and called it our depression. Freudian slip.
Freudian slip, yeah.
Yeah, but go for it, Amanda. Let's hear from you. This is what this is for today.
There are so many pieces that I want to weave together. So the first is Robert Benham was the first Chief Justice in the Georgia Supreme Court in the States. And as you know, they only outlawed slavery, you know, in Georgia like a couple of years ago. So to become the first Black Chief Justice there was no mean feat. I mean, he's an extraordinary man. And Robert Benham was the one who said that there are 3 professions common to every civilized society. I did take issue with the word civilized society, but there you have it.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So 3 professions common to every civilized society, and these are physicians who heal the body, the clergy who are charged with healing the soul, and lawyers who, rightly seen, heal breaches in the social fabric. Beautiful. And so that's what you were talking about earlier, that lawyers' role is to heal breaches in the social fabric. And if only we were able to see our role as such. So it is absolutely about reclaiming the law as a healing profession, the work that I do. And I used the tagline for a while, healing the legal profession one lawyer at a time. When I held my first conference for women lawyers, because in 2015, I feel a lot of the change is being brought about by women, but by no means only by women. But there is a balance in the legal profession that's needed to shift, which brings in some of the traits which have been regarded as feminine. I disagree with these being, you know, seen as feminine, because we all have these masculine and feminine aspects within ourselves. But in the legal profession, it's been solely geared towards what is traditionally seen as more masculine. So the arguing, the adversarial, the very direct, the confrontational, as opposed to the relational. And the more we learn about neuroscience, women's brains are actually built differently. So we are wired for connection and what is good, better for the common good, because in terms of societal development, women had to preserve the family and relationships. That was really important. So a lot of the changes I'm seeing are being driven by women, but it's really difficult because they're working within a entire profession that only rewards a masculine way of being in the world. And therefore they are not able to bring who they really are to what they're doing, because that's frowned upon. And if you're in a large law firm, you're not going to make it if you try and only, you know, bring in too much of the feminine, because they are not there yet. And so skills like intuition, which are so incredibly powerful, you know, if a woman starts saying, I have this intuitive hunch, you know, in a large law firm, it's like, what? You know, people don't work like that. But it's only because we're unaware. We are working with intuition all the time. And women gather information. So in a room, a man might be directing the conversation forward, but a woman is gathering all of the different points of views and energies and where everybody's at. And that's just as vital to then drive the process forward, but first having gathered. So it's about this like bringing together of masculine and feminine energy. What I'm now realizing is central to all the work that I do, which is about, I transcend this terrain between spirituality and law. And that wasn't always clear to me. But as I've followed an increasingly spiritual path and yet wanting to bring that to the law, it's kind of become clearer. But I didn't even know like that was a thing, like spirituality and law, like aren't those other ends of the spectrum? And now I'm realizing I do have a tribe. And in fact, there's an organization called, the acronym is PISLAP, okay, which is really weird to me, but it's the project.
I follow them as well.
Yeah, the project for integrating law, politics, and spirituality. No, spirituality, law, and politics. The P is at the end. Yeah. And then you see things like this, and for a lot of lawyers, like, oh my God, there are other people doing this. I'm not alone. At the heart of this work is understanding that conflict is the most powerful tool we have for transformation. So lawyers who are what I'm now using the term awakening lawyers, it's awakening to a whole new consciousness. Awakening lawyers are realizing that conflict is the most powerful tool we have for transformation, and therefore starting to see their own role differently in terms of the responsibility of guiding people more mindfully through that process, knowing that it's there to teach them something and help them get to the other end, you know, intact and whole and integrated with a meaningful solution.
Just quickly on that score, I recently wrote a blog called "Can the Injury or Disease Heal Our Lives?" And it was inspired by Peace, Love and Healing, written by a doctor who said that it's vital that doctors start to see themselves as healers. And I think I was saying to you the other day, you could translate that whole book, or you could rewrite that whole book, replacing doctor with lawyer or mediator, and it would make 100% sense.
And that's what I did back in 2012, is I went on to a functional medicine, which is also called integrative medicine. They sometimes use the word functional medicine. I went onto a functional medicine website and I cut and paste 2 pages. And then I did a word swap with lawyer and doctor and client, and patient, and it read. And that's when I really, having done the word swap myself, realized we're not just aligned, it's 100% the same thing that is going on in both professions.
Of course.
So lawyers...
And isn't it, Amanda, that both professions, a profession is about regulation. It's about, like Dr. Cornel West talks about, his philosophy students coming in and, wanting to be professional, and that's the end game. But professionalism at its worst is about complacency and compliance and what's the other C word? But it's not about courage. It's not about moral courage.
It's form over substance.
Form over substance, and just the legal profession has replaced form over substance to a large extent. So that's why, there's this widespread sense that there is no justice, and the legal profession is kind of like, well, whatever you do, don't trust a lawyer, or the courts are going to let you down. It's form over substance constantly. So whenever professions become more about the rules than the substance, they become a shadow of what they're meant to be. Yes. So we lose ourselves along the way. We lose ourselves. And I think all of our work, your work, my work, there's an intuitive sense that we're trying to regain and reconnect the dots and come back to who we actually are.
Yes. So there's this homecoming that you spoke about.
Yes.
So lawyers who discover and start realizing that I can't work in this way anymore, there is a homecoming when they start finding other lawyers who are like them. But first of all, there's the first part of the awakening is often a very lonely process. So if I get back to the conflict thing, lawyers who are awakening realize that the power for transformation lies in conflict. So they start regarding their own role as healers of conflict in a different way and wanting to serve their clients in a more meaningful way. Those who are a little bit more advanced also start seeing that people then create or manifest conflict in their lives for a reason, because as you just said, like the injury is giving you what you need to heal. There's actually a book that I spoke about on the weekend called The Obstacle is the Way. It's become very famous. It's based on a saying by Marcus Aurelius. So the obstacle is the way. The conflict is what we need to go through, because it will teach us to become whoever it is we need to be next to do what we are next here to do in the world. So we can't avoid it. There's no going around. There's only through. So the more advanced lawyer on their path realizes that they can not only help the client to work through the conflict and come to a more integrated and whole and sustainable place at the end of it, whether it's, the dissolution of a marriage, but having a healthy parenting relationship afterwards. They help guide the client, but they also sometimes realize they can help the client understand perhaps why they've manifested this conflict, or look at whether there's a pattern that's at play. And then there's a second aspect to this whole thing about conflict, and that is the lawyer needs to be working with the conflict in their own lives and within themselves, because that's where their personal development lies. So whatever blockage there is, or something that has not been forgiven. So for example, I recently worked with a divorce lawyer, and she had not forgiven herself for her own divorce many years ago. So I'll explain how I came to that, because that's a different process. But it was her own healing that needed to be completed in that regard before she could fully do what she's here to do. So there's these two aspects to conflict. You need to understand its power for transforming your clients. You need to help them look at why they've created the conflict, and you need to be doing the conflict work in yourself. Now, lawyers are, in terms of what I'm offering now, I'm seeing it in terms of three sort of tiers. So at the bottom tier, we have law students who I believe are very ready for all of this work, because they are already disillusioned by the legal profession, if we can say that. They haven't hit it yet, but everything they're seeing and hearing, they're going, but I don't want this. And university obviously try and push that path of the big law firms. There's always a relationship between universities and the large law firms, and in terms of funding and donating and all of this stuff. So the open days tend to be quite heavily like big law firm, and students have this idea, if I don't do that, I'm a bit of a failure. Like it's a lesser path to follow something else in the law. So students are disillusioned. They're saying, I don't know if I want this. I've heard all this stuff, like you can't have a family and be a lawyer. You can't have a life outside the law. I'm going to be chewed up and spat out. Is this what I want? So I'm showing them that there's a whole different way of practicing, and that there are millions of new developments that they may not even have heard about yet. And most of these developments, they fall under something called the Integrative Law movement, as you are well aware, which has all of these many sub movements and areas of law underneath it. So restorative justice being one, and therapeutic jurisprudence, and mediation and transformative mediation, and mental health courts, and specialist courts for drug addicted offenders, and collaborative divorce. So there are loads of developments, and this broad term is just given integrative law movement to help us orient ourselves. That's all it is. It's a term going, oh, okay, like this is what we're talking about. People who are transforming the legal profession. And in many ways, it's in the commercial law, criminal law. And like a couple of students said to me, I like this area of law niche or something. And I said, it's just actually an umbrella term. You can't, integrative law isn't a subject that it's not a practice area, in other words. It is a way or lens, a way of seeing the legal profession and a lawyer's role within it. So first level of these students who going, can I maybe do things differently? And also feeling a sense, there's this growing sense of the world needs people who are stepping up and changing and making a difference, because we all realize the brokenness. And this year, this is being highlighted, how dysfunctional and toxic our systems are. So they're those students. And then there are also lawyers who I'd put at a similar level, although they're not, because, they've been practicing for a long time, but they also are going, wait, this is toxic. I can't do it anymore. The cost is too high. Like there is another way, but they're just at the beginning of that journey of going, what might that look like? Next level up, halfway up the mountain, we've got the lawyers who've done, as you have identified, they've done a mediation training. They suddenly are seeing life outside the adversarial paradigm, that there's another way, and they're excited but daunted, because they're realizing, what's that going to mean for my practice? What does that mean for my own life? In the program, you maybe showed me some things about myself and my past and how I've traditionally approached things. sometimes it's an acknowledgement of your own wounds and how we bring a certain lens to the world because of that, like the not good enough stuff or whatever. So these lawyers are going, there's something else, but I need to know how and where and what. And there's this like a bit of an overwhelm, if you like. Do I carry on the same way, but you've now shown me a different way? And then the next level up at the top of the mountain, we have lawyers who are already on a spiritual path. Normally they have some form of spiritual practice, and I don't mean religious here. It just means that they've made time for the inward journey. So whether it's a contemplative practice, it might be Zen meditation, it might be just spending time in nature. It could be Christian meditation. There are Hindu meditative practices. There are Buddhist ones. So the Islamic ones, but it's about that quietening and that connection with something greater than ourselves, transcending the egoic self. So those lawyers on a different path, and because of that, they generally have integrated that self into what they're doing, and so they practice in quite different ways, and they have this humanizing already. You know, they fully see that with their clients, and they often provide far more than legal advice to their clients because they are supporting emotionally, spiritually, you know, physically through the process. And these lawyers are already the harbingers of the new consciousness in law. So they are doing all sorts of extraordinary mediation work. And again, when I read like someone's testimonials on a website the other day, a lawyer in the States, I don't know her as a lawyer. I read the testimonials and my mouth was hanging open. I thought, you are extraordinary when I saw what her client said about her. You know, you can tell so much. You know, they're just saying, you changed my life. You are a healer. Like, my relationships are completely restored, and I've seen a new possibility for being and loving in the world I didn't know was possible. Now, people are saying that of a lawyer. So these are lawyers who are quite advanced on the path, but again, some of them are quite lonely because that's not where a lot of lawyers are. So they need help and support on their journey, and to be connected with other lawyers and more tools so that they can really, go out there and do what they came here to do, just give birth to a new legal system. So these are the 3 tiers.
Yeah. So just I think that we catching, or we having people sort of start on the first tier. You know, they've been in law, they've been in another profession, and we spoke earlier, and you're not your work is not limited to lawyers only, but as the integrative approach, the interdiscipline professions that come together to provide solutions to people's legal problems. So just kind of bearing that in mind, someone's coming from a profession, they're doing one of our programs, they're feeling like, well, this is a homecoming for me. This is it. This is something of what I've known or felt all along. This makes sense to me, but I can't quite give language to what the next step is. Yes. And the next step might be actually that lonely path, which is when they contact me and say, can we talk? Can we just do a Zoom, and can we just talk? Can you just sit with me? This is hard for me. I don't want to go back to where I was, but this is hard for me, and I don't really know what to say. And sometimes I'm just, sitting with people on Zoom right now, which I'm cool with. But there's this, like, there's this failure of language, and there's this loneliness, and this maybe even a bit of terror, but actually, there's a sense that I don't want to go back. I don't know what lies ahead. I want to sit with you and like get a sense of what lies ahead, but I don't exactly know how to verbalize it. And I felt, Amanda, that perhaps this is where you come in on that lonely path, or on that next level, or on that spiritual path, because absolutely, and Dan and I talk about this all the time. What we do is sacred work. It's sacred work. It's bringing together everything. It's bringing together the whole. It's bringing together the fact that we are micro earths. What we do to one cell, we do to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. in any thought we put out there, we have the ability to affect the whole universe. You know, when are we going to start seeing ourselves in terms of the concept of the whole? On we part of the whole and a whole part all at the same time. And I felt, you know, just through our your and my messaging, an interesting choice of words, messaging, but that perhaps there's a role for you to come in to help these lawyers or doctors or whatever who feel like they want to go through this transition, but they don't know how. They don't know how to put language to it. They don't know how to make sense of these feelings. They don't know how to make a sense of the depressed feelings, the need for deep rest, you know, so just can you tell us, like, just sort of at a high level, kind of what it is that you could offer? Because I feel certain that we need to develop an offering for our mediators after this to say, this can be a go-to for you to help you through this transition and to help you in this process of transformation. I would have loved to have something like that when I was going through this kind of lonely, like, I can't make sense of this path. You know, I've got a bush knife and, you know, I'm cutting down a bit of bush and that kind of thing, but I don't know where I'm going. But like, I'm just like following my own, you know, internal compass. But it would have been nice to sit with someone that maybe would help me give some language to it. And
so it would have been nice, but you wouldn't be who you are if you hadn't struggled through it.
Exactly.
I look now at my bookcase, which is so filled with books on the work we are born to do and finding your purpose in life and why am I here? And, you know, there's a lot of those books. And now, as I have started recording online programs for students, I realize I needed to go through all of that. And these lawyers who are in crisis about why am I here? You know, can I still practice law? You know, do I need to get out? And unfortunately, one of my big realizations through running the Women Lawyer Network is that lawyers who awaken too often leave the profession because they don't know how to keep surviving within it. They can't find their
that's often a pity, isn't it?
Yes,
it's a pity.
Because we lose all of the awakened lawyers. And so we are left, and I mean, this is a complete generalization. Please realize that when I say that. But we are left with the lawyers who are hardened, who have cut off from what's going on inside, and who are able to sustain, a living in quite torturous circumstances often. You know, like we talk about the 14-hour days, high levels of toxicity, traumatized clients in a profession that allows no room for supervision. In every other profession where there's face-to-face contact with traumatized people, there is a legal requirement that you are supervised, except in the law. So with the magistrates that I've been working with recently, there's barely any psychological support. And these are women and men who are listening to sexual offenses against children all day, and they are not subject to any support or counseling. It's like an outlier. There is this department and you have to fill in all these forms and you're seen as like, oh my God, is that person losing it if you get the help? It's still got that stigma attached in that profession. And I believe it's inhumane, and it should be illegal, that we have people who are the backbone of justice in this country who are not getting the support that they need to function optimally and have their own lives and be debriefed from the trauma that they listen to. So you can tell I'm quite fired up about that.
Absolutely. You must, we interviewing 2 neuropsychologists on Monday. They do neurofeedback work, and we're going to be talking specifically about understanding the brain and the effect trauma has on the brain, and how it actually can change brain chemistry, and how we carry that, and how we all need to be aware of that in others and in ourselves to a certain extent, and what we do with that. So please, you must listen to that and let us know what you think. But sorry to interrupt you. Carry on with what you were saying.
So in 2013, I brought Pauline Tesler to South Africa. She is a San Francisco lawyer. She's known as the godmother of collaborative divorce. I realized we didn't have any lawyers trained in collaborative divorce in this country, and so I took it upon myself to bring her here. Nearly killed me as one person to try and do that. At that stage, I hadn't even registered my company. But Pauline later said to me that she trained in 30 countries around the world, and she said she'd been brought by bar associations and universities, and she said, I've never been brought by one person to train a country ever. And she said that it was an extraordinary undertaking. And also there wasn't any support at that stage from the law societies or whatever. I kept trying to get them interested, but like their models are so outdated, and financially they're like, but do we have to pay for this training? And I'm like, yes. One of the most important takeaways from that every lawyer I think should know, and your neuroscientists hopefully next week will allude to this, but understanding that the brain has these three parts: the brain stem or reptilian part, the limbic system, which is in the middle, and then over the whole top is your prefrontal cortex. What happens as soon as someone is triggered emotionally, the amygdala hijack in a law meeting, which happens often. So you imagine a divorce meeting where, wife says to husband something about like, you're a lousy father and always have been, something very triggering. And this, like I say, it happens in legal meetings all the time. What happens is when we become very, very triggered, the fight or flight mechanism kicks in, and the prefrontal cortex actually goes offline. So they call it flipping your lid. There's a disconnect in that moment, and you are no longer able to function from this area. You're operating from a fight or flight response.
You go into the much older parts of the brain that work with fight or flight or
survival.
Freeze.
Survival. You're in survival mode. So your ration and reason and all that kind of thing, your ability to temper and measure yourself is completely shut down.
But the fascinating part is you can't see it. You can see a person's having a heightened emotional state. They might bang the table, they might be crying, whatever, but you can't see inside what's going on. So what we do as lawyers is you try to calm things down and say, let's get back on track, or here are the tissues, or walk outside for 5 minutes. But the neuroscience shows us that it takes a differing amount of time for the prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical brain, to come back online. And that can be quite often a matter of hours, depending on your previous trauma in your life, whether you're male, female, and a whole host of reasons. So what happens normally is there may be an adjournment, or the lawyers just carry on, and you like mop yourself up and carry on. But the person not there. The prefrontal cortex is not there. And so you keep talking and say, let's look at it from this angle, and maybe we can reframe that, blah, blah, blah. But none of it's landing. And whatever you try to do,
how can you then meaningfully negotiate this territory?
Exactly. There is no meeting of minds possible, because this person's mind, if you just remember flipping your lid, they're not there. They are not there.
Exactly.
And I'm using this training now with my child, because I was reminded of it in a parents training recently. When he's flipped his lid, he's 5, it happens. We tidied away the Lego tray with the special pieces on, and he lost it. And I try and rationalize like we were just trying to tidy up. And then I go, no, hold on. He's not there. He can't hear my rational, calm, logical explanation.
You don't have an audience with him at that moment.
Yes.
You literally, at a scientific level, you do not have an audience, and this is where abuse sets in, and people just try and kind of just push through that territory, not knowing that, as you say, the person is just not there at the moment. That person.
So he's the kid. I'm learning. I can pick him up and hold him, and I have to just work with the central nervous system, because that's all that matters in that moment. But it's so tempting to go into your mind and like try and reason and rationalize and use logic, because that's what we are programmed and taught to do.
Exactly.
And so lawyers do that all the time, every day in their practices, not realizing that the people, like you say, are offline. They're no longer there. And I'd be quite interested if something is agreed upon during that meeting, because like you say, how can there be a meeting?
Do they have legal capacity then?
Yes. Yes,
Do they have legal
that becomes
capacity?
very interesting.
Exactly. There's so much for us to talk about, and I think we should possibly do a whole series of these things. Unfortunately, time is not on our side right now, and Daniel just needs to just give us an indication. But I think we've got to go into training at 9, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got about 2 minutes.
Okay, so we'll wrap up in 2 minutes. You were asking me about what the support looks
What
like.
can you offer? What can we, and you and I will talk more in depth about it, but just like a little taster of something that, what might it look like for you to work with someone that's going through this very often scary, but also sacred sort of transitional process where the inner person is transforming and things outside look a bit different and a bit scary, and how am I going to pay the bills, and etc.
So
the whole thing.
It needs to be an integrative experience. So we're looking at physical components about how you're taking care of yourself, what your actual day-to-day, practice looks like, your self-care. Then there's the intellectual aspect of how you're approaching things, emotional and spiritual. So it's like helping support someone through all of those things. At the moment, I'm working, because of this year and how things have unfolded, in putting everything into online courses. So some of them will be self-watch. You can go to Udemy, or the other platform I'm looking at is Thinkific or Teachable. Online platforms, you can buy a program and watch it. But then the second level would be that it's a coached program. So there's some short videos to watch, and then we have a Zoom, call once a week, so that there's coaching support for what's going on and unfolding. And then in some cases, there's a far more spiritual dimension to helping people really figure out their purpose. And I mean, I can talk about the more spiritual aspects in another session that I think we need to have. But it is working with people where they're at, connecting them with other people who are in similar positions worldwide, and those who are a bit further along the track, because that's what gives us the hope and motivation. So was there, and she's got through that, and now is doing this extraordinary thing. And it may not be that I want to do that type of law or whatever, but she got from here to there, and that gives us all hope and encouragement. So it is an integrative holding of lawyers, which I will do largely through a mixture of one-on-one coaching, plus, because that can get expensive when it's one-on-one, but also online programs people can do together where they are in their own community of support. And in that way, like you say, it's a homecoming, finding people who are like me, who are struggling with the same stuff, just knowing that I'm not alone.
I think maybe we've got a 5-day training coming up next week, and I think maybe we should invite you to give a little guest talk, and just help with that awakening process and giving a bit of a framework to it. And you and I can talk over the next week about kind of what we might be able to offer those that are going through this and beyond, and see how it's definitely, it's indicated. This is the prescription. It's got to be, or it's got to be one of the things on the prescription, like breathing.
Yes.
So that's just amazing. I feel like we could talk for hours, and
definitely about 3 or 4. We wouldn't run out of space. I jotted down some things to mention, and I haven't mentioned half of them.
That's okay. We'll save it for next one.
No, we've definitely got to have a follow-up to this, Dan. And perhaps even rooted in our 5-day program next week, so she gets to meet everyone. We've got a few interesting people coming on next week, so that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Amanda.
It's wonderful to be able to talk to people who do understand exactly what I'm talking about, because as you understand, it's quite a niche area. I think my family is only just beginning to understand what I do. For some people, I just say it's leadership for lawyers, because that's about as far as they can understand. And that's also true. It is leadership for lawyers, but it's also a whole lot more. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about what I'm here to do. And my name, Amanda Lamond, it actually means the beloved law speaker.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's profound.
That is beautiful.
This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Dan.
and we'll see you next time.
Good luck to you and your husband for the training at 9. Good luck to you and your husband for whatever your day looks like, Amanda. And we'll talk later.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.